Spread love, man.
And my experience with the teachers that I have had and with my own meditative practices and with my own reading is that we sign up for all of this and that there are no accidents. That God's plan works and yours doesn't, by and large. And if you want yours to work, make it the same as God's and understand that. And that when you are in nowhere, you make a decision to come here. And you pick who you're coming here with. And so if you don't like who you got, you ought to be wondering why you picked them. And when you left nowhere, and we all leave nowhere, N-O-W-H-E-R-E, and we get to now here, N-O-W-H-E-R-E, and it's all the same. It's just a question of spacing.
From nowhere to now here. And let me tell you, it's it's classic Dyer, life, death, consciousness.
Yeah.
The really big stuff. So to help us unpack it all, we've got our expert here, ready to jump in.
Absolutely. Always up for a good existential exploration. Dyer really had this way of making these complex spiritual ideas, well, relatable. And this clip, it's a perfect example of that, touching on all these profound ideas you find in various mystical traditions.
He jumps right in, too. Starts talking about nowhere before birth and after death. It's kind of a jarring concept, at first. But he frames it as this natural cycle, right?
He does. See, what Dyer's doing there is challenging that fear-based view of death so many of us have. Like, instead of an ending, he's proposing it's more of a transition, drawing on, his interpretations of various spiritual teachings. But it's important to remember this is just one perspective, and it might not resonate with everyone.
That's true. Always good to keep an open mind. But then he throws this curveball and says, we choose our lives, even our families, before we're born. So if you're not exactly thrilled with your family, well, Dyer might just say you're the one who picked them. What do you make of that?
It's definitely a bold statement. I mean, there's no scientific evidence to back up pre-birth life selection or anything. But I think it's a powerful invitation, Like, what if, instead of blaming everything outside of ourselves for our unhappiness, what if we entertain the idea that we have a hand in creating our experiences, even unconsciously?
I see what you mean. Definitely a different way of looking at things. Okay, so then he shifts gears a bit. He compares our everyday awareness to a room in a house with this whole other section he calls higher awareness. Sounds a bit like something out of a fantasy novel, right?
I can see why you'd say that. Think of the house as a metaphor, right? For our consciousness, our daily awareness, all the everyday stuff, that's just one room. But Dyer's suggesting there's this whole other dimension within us, this higher awareness that's more expansive, more interconnected.
So how do we tap into that? He mentions meditation, even quotes a Buddhist teacher, Joseph Goldstein. Is that the key? Unlocking this higher awareness.
Meditation is definitely a path that Dyer advocates for, and it aligns with a lot of contemplative practices out there. The key, he says, is direct experience, not just blind faith or dogma. Goldstein echoes this too when he talks about how transformative meditation can be. It's about experiencing it for yourself, not just reading about it in a book.
Right, makes sense. But then he brings in this concept of God. Is that where things get a little, preachy?
That's an interesting point. It's true, Dyer does use the term God.
Yeah.
But he's not talking about it in a, rigid religious way. He's stressing a personal, experiential understanding, highlighting the importance of direct knowing, which you actually find in a lot of different traditions, spiritual and philosophical.
So it's more about connecting with something larger than ourselves, however we define that.
Exactly. And what's really fascinating is that Dyer suggests this knowing, this connection, it can actually help diminish fear. He even tells this really moving anecdote about Mother Teresa, emphasizing how recognizing our interconnectedness can be an antidote to loneliness.
Now, that's something I think we can all relate to, that desire for connection. Okay, but here's where things get really interesting for me. Dyer says the key is to become the noticer, the observer of our thoughts and feelings, instead of getting swept away by them. He even says that this noticer, this is the eternal aspect of our being. What do you think he means by that?
That right there, that's a core concept in Dyer's teachings. And it's rooted in a lot of non-dualistic philosophies, which basically means exploring the idea that separation is an illusion. Now, I know that might sound a little complex at first, but stick with me. The basic idea is that there's a part of you, the noticer, that witnesses your thoughts and emotions without being them.
So there's a difference between the you that's experiencing life and the you that's observing the experience.
Precisely. And that observer, that noticer, that's what Dyer identifies as the unchanging essence of who we are. It's beyond all the ever-shifting thoughts and emotions, the ups and downs of life. It's a powerful concept to consider, isn't it?
It really is powerful. It makes you think,
Yeah.
like this noticer is this untouched part of us, this inner sanctuary.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And it's not just some abstract idea either. Dyer wants us to really experience this directly. It's about shifting that focus, right? Away from all the thoughts and feelings that just pop up and grab our attention. Instead, we tune into that steady, unchanging observer inside.
But how do we actually do that? It still feels kind of, I don't know, abstract.
Well, that's where practices like meditation come in, right? But it's not just about sitting on a cushion with your eyes closed. Dyer's talking about recognizing this knowing in everyday life, in every moment. He even says understanding this, it can really help alleviate fear because we start to realize, hey, we're not alone. There's this eternal aspect of ourselves that's always connected to something much bigger.
Right. And he tells that story about Mother Teresa, how she'd tell people, you are not alone. So like recognizing the noticer within, it naturally makes us more compassionate, more likely to want to help others find that same peace.
Exactly. And this ties back into that whole idea of knowing God, which, again, for Dyer, isn't about religion, right? It's about that experience of connection to something greater than ourselves.
Yeah, and he's very clear that it's not about blind faith. It's about direct personal experience. Like, you got to discover this for yourself.
Absolutely. It's not a belief system. It's an invitation, an inner exploration. And he even points to all these different texts, the Course in Miracles, the New Testament, the Bhagavad Gita. It's like this concept of an unchanging reality within. It's a recurring theme across spiritual traditions.
Wow, so it's not just Wayne Dyer's opinion. It's like he's drawing on this ancient wisdom. He also talks about aligning our personal will with God's plan, though. What do you think he means by that?
It seems like he's suggesting that when we align ourselves with this higher awareness, right, it's about aligning with this kind of universal flow, a sense of order, which he says can bring a real sense of peace and purpose. He even throws in some humor here, talking about how we resist the natural order of things, even death itself, like we're clinging to our egos.
He really covers it all, doesn't he? Life, death, the nature of reality, our connection to something larger. That's a lot to take in.
It really is. But that's what makes it so engaging. He weaves these profound ideas together in a way that's both insightful and accessible.
And then he leaves us with this incredible statement. He says, reality is defined by what never changes. So if our thoughts are always changing, our feelings, even our bodies, what is it within us that remains constant?
That, my friend, is the million-dollar question. And according to Dyer, the answer lies in connecting with that noticer, that unchanging observer within us, the one who's always there, beyond all the ups and downs of life.
So instead of searching for answers out there in the world, he's saying we need to turn inward, connect with that eternal aspect of ourselves. It's a pretty radical idea, but also incredibly empowering when you think about it.
Absolutely. He's suggesting that real peace, real fulfillment, it doesn't come from achievements or possessions. It comes from recognizing the unchanging, eternal nature of our being. He even contrasts this, the peace of someone like Mother Teresa who dedicated her life to others, compared to that often chaotic pursuit of just satisfying our egos.
So it's an inside job, this happiness thing. Can't find it in the fleeting things of the world, only by connecting with that unchanging source within.
Precisely. He's urging us to shift that focus from the external to the internal, from the temporary to the eternal.
Universal stuff. It really makes you wonder, what if we all tapped into this noticer within? How would that change things,
Now that is a question worth pondering. It's like Dyer's implying that recognizing this inner truth, it's not just a personal journey. It has these huge implications for all of us, for humanity as a whole. Think about it.
If everyone really could tap into that, is that what he means by aligning with God's plan? It's like by connecting with that deeper part of ourselves, we're also, aligning with this greater purpose.
That's a really interesting connection. Dyer does seem to be saying there's this natural harmony, this flow that happens when we align our own will with that larger awareness. And it's not so much about following rules, right? It's more about recognizing that connection we have to something bigger than ourselves.
So it's not about, figuring out some predetermined plan. It's about cultivating that awareness and trusting it'll guide us.
It seems that way, right? And remember, Dyer's all about personal experience over blind faith. He's not saying, believe this because I said so. He's saying, explore this for yourself. See if this idea of a noticer resonates with your own experiences.
Well, it's definitely given me a lot to think about. This whole deep dive, it's been a journey, that's for sure. We started with nowhere and ended up contemplating the eternal noticer inside all of us.
It has been quite the exploration, but that's the beauty of Dyer's work, you know? He takes these really complex, really profound spiritual ideas and presents them in a way that just, it sparks your curiosity. It makes you want to go on that inner journey, that discovery.
So as we wrap up this mind-bending deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from all of this?
That's a great question. I think the most valuable thing Dyer leaves us with is this. If there's a part of you, a part of all of us, that exists beyond time, beyond all the ups and downs, what would it be like to really embody that knowing? Not just think about it, but to really live it every day.
Wow, yeah. What a powerful question to ask ourselves. It's like he's challenging us to go beyond just understanding these concepts in our heads and actually experience them for ourselves.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, it's not about blindly believing anything. It's about experiencing truth for yourself.
And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder this incredible idea, this noticer within. Until next time, everyone, keep asking those big questions. And remember, the most profound journey we can take is often the one we take into ourselves.